Hey guys, Keaton here from TechSmart, and today we'll be doing a full comparison between Apple's newly released iPhone 5C to their newly released flagship, the iPhone 5S. These phones are suited for two different people in two different markets here, so it's going to be interesting to see how these phones hold up in 6 months' time and to see if they're still doing what they were to do as advertised. So let's go ahead and pick these phones apart one by one and see what they offer to the table. So up first is hardware and design. So both phones here feature a 4-inch display. It's a Retina display, and Apple's pretty big on being able to touch all four corners of the phone. Both phones feature a resolution of 1136 by 640. They come in at pixels per inch of 326, so this screen just looks absolutely gorgeous on both phones. With the iPhone 5S, it features the new A7 dual-core chip, clocked in at 1.3 GHz, and this is the first 64-bit chip out there, as the iPhone 5C comes in at a A6 dual-core processor, clocked in at 1.25 GHz. So both phones feature LTE, but with the iPhone 5S, it features the new M7 Motion coprocessor chipset. So what this is going to do is it's going to improve the compass, the accelerometer, and give fitness applications a new kind of life. Both phones feature 1 GB of RAM, and with the iPhone 5S, it comes in at 7.6 millimeters in thickness, as the iPhone 5C comes in 8.95 millimeters of thickness, so that plastic there is kind of adding a little bit more bulk in your pocket, but that's a bit understandable. The iPhone 5S weighs 3.95 ounces or 112 grams, as the iPhone 5C comes in at 4.65 ounces and weighs 132 grams. So definitely the plastic and the steel in the iPhone 5C is going to definitely put the more weight onto the phone. They both charge via the Lightning port that we saw last year, and it's kind of interesting to see the battery life, as Apple is claiming 10 hours of battery life on the iPhone 5S, as they're also claiming on the iPhone 5C 8 hours of battery life. And finally here, build quality. So the iPhone 5S, as we know it, features a nice aluminum with the glass backing here. It comes in 3 colors. We have the space gray, the gold, and the silver. It looks great, but the glass bars at the top are the antennas, and I think the iPhone 5S feels the most solid in your hands. And then there's the iPhone 5C. It's plastic, it's slippery, it feels a bit cheap, but is reinforced by steel, so it's not all that cheap as we do see in other smartphones. So yes, you can hold it in your hand, but it feels slippery like the Samsung Galaxy S4. So moving on, let's go ahead and talk display. Display is pretty much the biggest thing on a phone next to battery life for me, as this is where all your content is going to be displayed. So both phones come in at 4 inches. It's a Retina display. It looks great. The resolution is 1136 by 640 with the pixels per inch of 326. And for the most part, colors look accurate. You cannot distinct any pixels on the phones. And it was surprising to see that with the 5C. I thought they'd definitely knock it down considering it's a cheaper phone, but they kept it the exact same as the iPhone 5. So if you take a look at the color representation chart on both phones here, the colors look absolutely stunning when you see them in person. It's almost one of those things where you have to see it to believe it. And for sure, I thought the iPhone 5C was going to be the worst out of the bunch here with the screen, but surprisingly, it's on par with the iPhone 5S. So up next is software. So software on both of these phones is iOS 7 or 7.0.1, as they had a few bug fixes, hence the 0.1. But if you've not been running iOS 7 or have not really seen it, it is a whole new face to the iPhones. We have a control panel via swiping up, and it's just a new look to the iPhones that we really didn't see before. Some of the icons are changed, and it just gives it kind of a nice, fresh, polished look, but with having the sophistication that we kind of lacked on iOS 6. And it just kind of gave me the new excitement. We have this new thing called dynamic wallpapers, which allows you to have a 3D wallpaper. So for example, I have the bubbles here and they kind of move around, and you can go and customize your own. Also, Siri is completely different in iOS 7, and some are saying that it's no longer in the beta phases as we saw it with the iPhone 4S and the 5. It can do a lot more things such as search tweets from a specific user. So say I wanted to find tweets about myself or just find tweets that I tweeted, I can go ahead and say, hey Siri, please find @Keaton on Twitter, and you can go and find those tweets. Also, it just responds and can hear things so much better, so the recognition has been drastically improved to go and get what you want done on the first time. So up next is speed and benchmarks. So just to reiterate, the Apple iPhone 5S features the new dual-core A7 chip, clocked in at 1.3 GHz, as the iPhone 5C features a dual-core A6 chip, clocked in at 1.25 GHz. So up first is Geekbench 3 test. So this is a pretty standard test that most people use for all their devices, so it can give us a good basis of what we're looking at with the phones. So for the iPhone 5C, we received a single core score of 711, and for a multi-core score of the 5C, we received a score of 1276. So definitely pretty respectable there. But for the iPhone 5S, we received a single core score of 1413 and a multi-core score of 2562. So that is exactly double of what the 5C is, or also known as the iPhone 5, considering it features the same specifications specifications in there, so the 5S is pretty remarkable and it's definitely worth the upgrade in that standard. So in the Geekbench test, we kind of tested the entire phone, but let's go and check out the graphics card. So we're using GFX Bench here to test both phones here. So the demo is pretty much someone running through a palace/temple, so I'll go ahead and get back to you once the test concludes. So for those curious, it's just someone running through a temple, and I think this is the best visual representation of how the graphics card can really hold up in a mobile phone like this. But all that setting aside, we received a score of 4,251 frames for the iPhone 5C, and for the iPhone 5S we received a whopping 6,011 for the iPhone 5S. That is absolute colossal, and this phone is really meant to do work, and that was tested at 53 frames per second for the iPhone 5S. So from just that test, if you're going to be doing gaming on this phone, or you're a gamer, a mobile gamer, this is for you. You need to get the iPhone 5S. It's 53 frames per second and a score of 6,011 is just what you need, and this phone can really do whatever you want in the graphics department. So up next, we'll be doing a speed test between both of these phones on the same current Wi-Fi network. So we're going to test them individually so one doesn't hinder the other's ability to get a higher score. So up first, let's go ahead and check out the iPhone 5S. So let's go and begin the speed test for the 5S. So just a little side fact here, where I typically film these videos, I'm in the lower portion of my house, but when I'm in the higher portions of my house, the speed test here, so we're seeing about 25, I can get up to 100 when I'm at the highest point of my house. So it really stagnates, but this is just the most accurate result as I'll be conducting the 5C portion of it in the same location. So for the results of the iPhone 5 speed test, we got a ping score of 17, a download speed of 25.62 megabytes per second, and an upload speed of 5.11 megabytes per second. So now for this same speed test, just on the iPhone 5C here, we're probably going to receive a score around the same as we did with the iPhone 5S, just because it's on the same Wi-Fi network, but keep in mind things could always change. So I'll go ahead and get back to you once the results are in. So the iPhone 5C received a ping score of 20, it received a download speed of 18.49 megabytes per second, and an upload speed of exactly 5 megabytes per second. So it's definitely interesting, but keep in mind here with the speed test, at different spots in your house, on your Wi-Fi, or wherever connection you're using, it can constantly change, and this is just one test out of several you could do. So for the final part of the benchmark portion of this video, we'll go ahead and load up a few web pages. So we just went ahead and loaded up youtube.com, and I'd say both phones went to the site exactly at the same time, so they can keep up with one another, and that's great to see. We'll go ahead and load up another page, so do AT&T.com here. And then surprisingly, the iPhone 5C beat the iPhone 5S, but again, this is just two tests out of the several you could do, but this is just an example of how quick and how great the content can be displayed on both phones. So up next in our comparison is the camera test using the front-facing camera and the rear-facing camera on both phones. So up first is pictures with the rear-facing camera, and I'd say that the iPhone 5S portrays the colors in the leaves here just a little bit better and a little bit more brighter, as you'd see with the human eye, over the iPhone 5C. So both phones feature an 8-megapixel camera with 1080p HD video, but the iPhone 5S features a new lens which can feature f2.2 aperture, so it's going to give you a nice wide angle on the video and photos of the rear-facing camera. Both phones are featuring a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera, and from what we can see in the shots here, I'd say both are going to be great for taking pictures of yourself or using Instagram or whatever you want to do, and especially for those video calls. 720p HD video rocks on both these phones, and the color representation is just absolutely out of this world. So here's just a quick clip with the video on the front-facing camera. I'd say they both look pretty good and pretty sharp, and they'll definitely be ideal for Skype or some type of video call. So with the iPhone 5S, it features 120 frames per second slow motion video, which is absolutely gorgeous, and that comes in at a resolution of 720p HD. It also features a new dual flash, which is nice for those low light scenarios, so that's always good because you can actually take more pictures in low light and have them turn out pretty good. So in the iPhone 5S and iOS 7, the camera options here are really extensive, and that's something that I really like about this phone. You have tons of options. You have video, square, panorama mode, slow-mo mode on the iPhone 5S. You can go in and do some filters, so that really gives you the customizability that you want on a camera whilst being able to keep the optics nice and fine. So with the iPhone 5C, I expected the images to be nice and crystal clear, and I actually got that because most of the specifications on the iPhone 5 can be found on the iPhone 5C, just a few little color changes, and I was actually quite surprised with the cameras. I thought Apple would for sure dumb it down to go ahead and keep the budget underway. So transitioning onto the new features that each phone really has, one of the big things with the iPhone 5S is the new fingerprint scanner known as Touch ID. It's quite accurate, it takes a little bit of time to set up, but it's quite interesting to see how good it is, as I thought this could be completely gimmicky and fluky and it really wouldn't work, and it was just something that was advertised. So when I go ahead and lock my phone up and go ahead and place my finger on there, I'd say wait about a second and your phone is completely unlocked. Now it's cool that Apple also makes you feature some kind of passcode in case you forget your fingerprint or it's just not working. So so that can always go ahead and be adjusted. Also on the 5S is the new A7 dual-core chip and the M7 coprocessor, which just gives this phone a whole new life, and it makes it that much noticeable when you're comparing it to other phones such as the iPhone 5C or 5S. And with both of those processors in there, I was able to fly through applications, browsers, pretty much anything you want to do with speed. As for the iPhone 5C, it's pretty much the exact same as the iPhone 5. There's a few upgrades such as a little bit better battery life and a little bit better of a camera, but for the most part the OS is the same on both phones. It has this kind of weird, cheap, slippery feel, but it's kind of nice they reinforced it with steel, so it doesn't feel all that cheap, but then again it kind of slips out of my hand when I'm trying to hold it at a certain angle. So up next is battery life. Your phone can't work without a battery juiced and running, so this is pretty much one of the biggest features on the phone here. Both phones feature pretty good battery life, but keep in mind here it is non-removable like some of its competitors, so that can be viewed as a pro or con, but look at that beauty, so I think the battery can stay inside there and be okay for me at least. So in the iPhone 5S, it features a brand new 1560 mAh battery, and Apple is claiming up to 10 hours of battery life on here. Now, when I was using the phone periodically, I was able to get around 9 to 9.5 hours, but when I was using it hard, I was able to get around 7 hours, as you can really push this phone down in battery, and that was something that I noticed with the iPhone 5. But both phones charge via Lightning here, and I was able to easily get a full day out of this, as my work day is typically around 7 hours. So as for the iPhone 5C, it features a new 1510 mAh battery, so that's slightly bigger than the iPhone 5, so that's always good, so you'll be able to get a little bit more out of it than you were with the iPhone 5, as that featured a 1440 mAh battery, so Apple's claiming up to 8 hours on this phone. I was able to get about 7 using it periodically, and when I was using it extensively, I was able to get around 6 hours, so depending on your full day, you could easily get by using this phone just periodically. So the final verdict on both phones here, I'm talking about the iPhone 5S first. I'd definitely say it's worth it. If you're looking for new features, kind of a new life to the iPhone, iOS 7 runs great here. The enhanced security with the Touch ID/fingerprint scanner is great. The better camera and video is essential for me. I love the slow motion video because I do some video work on the side where that slow motion aspect is nice to see when I'm going and on the go. Also, the better battery life in here is great. I was able to get about 1 to 1.5 hours extra, so that is crucial for me as my phone typically dies quicker than I've ever seen any other phone. And also, I like the new color. Gold is something that I'm going to be keeping with my daily driver. It's super cool, and it's something different as we've traditionally seen the black and white color models. And also, I'm not a big fan of plastic. I like the aluminum. I like what we've seen in the past, and I like how my iPhone 5 was aluminum and how it featured all the other great beauty aspects that I saw, and that's something I want to continue with. And finally here, the A7 chip with the 64-bit processing, it just flies off the table. It's twice as fast as the iPhone 5C and iPhone 5, so that's always great. And the M7 coprocessor is great for fitness applications and that accelerometer and that compass. So the brand new iPhone 5S comes in 3 colors, silver, gold, and the new space gray. I love all the colors, they look great, but on a 2-year contract, this phone's going to run you about $199 for the 16GB model, and then it goes upwards about $100 up to the 64GB model. Now, if you're like me who wants to go ahead and buy it unlocked, it's going to come in at $650 for the 16GB model. So with the verdict on the iPhone 5C here, it is the exact same as the iPhone 5 with a few minor upgrades, such as better battery life and a kind of a new feel to it. There's no longer an aluminum feel to this. It's plastic as we've already seen. It's steel reinforced, but it's still pretty slippery in the hands, so that might not be for you. It features Siri, it features iOS 7, it's for phones with emerging markets and just want the iOS experience on an iPhone. It comes in 5 colors, blue, green, yellow, pink, and white. Those are pretty cool, and then on the iOS side, they have a color-coordinated background, but you can always go ahead and change that. So on a 2-year contract, it's going to run you about $99, but if you want to buy it unlocked, it's going to start at $550, so definitely not cheap for a phone made out of plastic and kind of sub-level for the iPhone 5, so I'd highly recommend going and spending an extra $100 for the new features and for having Apple's flagship. So in the end, if I had to recommend a phone to any consumer, I'd say go with the iPhone 5S. For an extra $100, you're getting a faster processor, the first 64-bit processor out there, a new kind of coprocessor, which is really going to improve the compass and accelerometer on there. The features on there are great. The new wide-angle lens, the f2.2 aperture on there, it just looks absolutely stunning with the photos, and all the details are really going to be encapsulated with a nice wide-angle shot. And then finally, you're getting a new color, new security features, and just iOS 7 runs seamlessly on this phone, and I just think it's a worthy upgrade over the cheap plastic iPhone that goes for just $100 less. Now, if you're someone who just wants an iOS experience, just go with the iPhone 5C. And if you want some colors or just want a plastic kind of feeling phone, I don't know why you would, just go ahead and go with the iPhone 5C. It's great, it's fine, but again, you're not getting the better battery life like you would be on the iPhone 5S. Thank you guys so much for watching this full comparison between the iPhone 5s and the iPhone 5c. Both phones are great. They really suit two different types of people. So if you guys enjoyed this video, go and give the video a like because it truly helps the channel out a bunch and it lets me know these are comparisons that you want to see more of. Also go ahead and subscribe if you want more destruction content or you just want other types of videos on the brand new Apple iPhone 5c and 5s. Thank you guys once again and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.